I never imagined that after 8 years together, I would be sitting here wondering if the woman I married was hiding something from me. Yet that Thursday night changed the way I looked at everything we had built together from scratch. Sarah and I were not just partners in marriage, we were partners in life. We planned every detail of our future side by side, from saving for a house to picking the names of the kids we hoped to have one day. We had our share of disagreements like any couple, but nothing that ever left me questioning her loyalty or my faith in her words, until she said those 7 simple words. She told me, "It's just a business meeting tonight," with that casual tone she used when she didn't expect me to care much about the details, and at that moment I truly didn't think I would. She mentioned a client from out of town, needing her expertise over dinner, and smiled as she picked up her bag from the couch where it always rested during workdays. I nodded, thinking it was no different from the dozens of late evenings she had spent over the years entertaining clients or attending industry events. But there was a look in her eyes that made something inside me pause for a second, a flicker that was gone almost as quickly as it appeared, like a shadow crossing a bright wall. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her gaze slipped past me as though she was already halfway out the door in her mind, heading to wherever this meeting would be held. I shook it off, telling myself I was reading too much into nothing, the way people sometimes do when they're tired after a long day. Sarah came out of the bedroom a few minutes later dressed in her sharp black blazer, the one she wore only for big presentations or high-profile meetings, paired with her signature heels. She smelled faintly of the perfume I had given her last Christmas, an expensive scent she rarely used unless she wanted to make an impression on someone. "Don't wait up for me," she said lightly, placing a quick kiss on my cheek before slipping out the door with an ease that now feels almost rehearsed. At first, I didn't think much about her absence, pouring myself a drink and ordering my usual Friday night takeout from the Thai place down the street, then settling in with some mindless TV. The apartment felt quieter than usual, the hours stretching into the kind of stillness that makes you notice every creak in the walls and hum from the refrigerator. I kept glancing at my phone, expecting at least a quick text, but as the minutes turned into hours, the screen remained stubbornly blank. By the time the clock ticked past midnight, a small knot of unease had settled in my stomach, though I kept telling myself there was no reason for it to be there. Sarah had been late before. Her job often required her to smooth over conversations with lingering clients or to stay behind and discuss contracts. Still, the absence of any message from her felt unusual, like a small gap in a story that should have been seamless. When the door finally opened just after 1 in the morning, she moved quietly through the entryway, slipping off her heels and setting her bag down without turning on the lights. I pretended to be asleep, my breathing steady as I listened to the muffled sound of her walking straight into the bathroom and starting the shower. Water ran for longer than usual, the sound filling the darkened apartment as my mind spun with silent, unwanted thoughts. The next morning over breakfast, I asked her how the meeting went, my tone casual but my eyes searching her face for clues I didn't want to find. She replied with a faint smile, "It was fine. Just business, nothing worth talking about," before turning her attention back to her coffee as though that ended the conversation. Something about her brevity felt deliberate, like she wanted to shut down any follow-up questions before they could begin. I tried to push the unease aside for the rest of the weekend, reminding myself that mistrust could be poison in a relationship if left unchecked. But then on Sunday afternoon, while looking for my phone charger in her tote bag, my hand brushed against something unexpected. It was a small white envelope with the Grandview Hotel logo printed neatly across the front, holding a single plastic room key card inside. The Grandview wasn't just any hotel, it was one of the most expensive in the city, the kind of place reserved for anniversaries or discreet meetings. Sarah and I had never stayed there together, and she had never mentioned going there for work, not even once in passing. As I held the envelope, my heart began to pound, a sharp beat that seemed to echo in the quiet of our kitchen. For a moment, I considered putting it back, convincing myself there might be an innocent explanation, something harmless that I hadn't yet thought of. But the image of her walking out on Thursday night in her best outfit kept flashing in my mind, connecting dots I didn't want connected. In that instant, I decided I wasn't ready to confront her until I knew more, and I slipped the envelope quietly into my jacket pocket. From that point on, I started noticing things that had previously escaped me, small behaviors that now seemed to glow under a spotlight of suspicion. She kept her phone face down on the table, even during dinner, something she had never bothered with before in all our years together. Conversations with me seemed shorter, her mind wandering elsewhere even as she smiled and nodded at the right moments. On Sunday night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed twice on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with messages from an unsaved number. I didn't touch it, but my eyes were drawn to the preview notifications like a moth to a flame, each one a reminder that something was wrong. When she came out, she picked up the phone immediately, locked it without opening the messages, and gave me a smile that felt thin and forced. I lay awake that night, the weight of the hotel key card pressing against my mind, every memory of the last few days reshaping itself into something darker. All the plans we had made together, the vacations, the house we dreamed of, the conversations about children, suddenly they all felt fragile. I knew I couldn't rest until I had more answers, until I understood exactly what that small piece of plastic represented. On Monday morning after she left for work, I grabbed my jacket and the key card, my decision already made by the restless hours of the night before. The Grandview Hotel lobby was sleek and silent, the air perfumed with something expensive, and the marble floor gleaming under soft lighting. I approached the front desk with what I hoped was a neutral expression, sliding the envelope across as if it were an afterthought. The clerk glanced at it, typed a few keys, and said, "Room 714, checked in Thursday night, checked out Friday morning." When I asked if she had been alone, the clerk's polite smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered for just a moment. "I'm sorry, I can't disclose guest details," she said, but the pause before her words spoke louder than anything else could have. I left the hotel feeling both heavier and lighter, burdened by suspicion, but fueled by a growing need for the truth. The key card in my pocket no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like the first piece of evidence in a case I had no choice but to solve. Deep down, I knew that once I started down this path, there would be no turning back, no way to unsee what I might uncover. Driving back from the Grandview Hotel, my thoughts felt like loose wires sparking against each other, each memory of Sarah's recent behavior now taking on a sharper, more suspicious edge than before. The more I replayed the past few weeks, the more small things stood out. Her sudden increase in late nights, her phone always face down, the way she avoided eye contact when explaining where she'd been. It was as if my mind was pulling threads from a sweater, and I was starting to see the shape of what had been hidden beneath. That night at dinner, I studied her with a calm face, though inside my chest felt like it was tightening around my heart. She talked about her day in quick, clipped sentences, showing none of the excitement she used to share when telling me about work. I nodded and smiled at the right moments, but in my head I was comparing every word to the image of that hotel key card in my pocket. 2 days later, she casually mentioned another networking event, this time at a downtown bar we'd been 2 years ago. Her explanation was smooth, but her eyes flickered toward the floor when I asked who else would be there. She left in a rush, blazer sharp, perfume lingering, and something in the back of my mind whispered that she was running toward something, not away from it. I waited 10 minutes before leaving the apartment, telling myself I was just curious, not suspicious, though I knew that was a lie. When I arrived, the bar was crowded, but she wasn't anywhere inside despite claiming she was there for the evening. A slow burn started in my stomach when I spotted her car parked 3 blocks away, engine still warm, but no sign of her. I drove home without calling her, the silence in the car feeling heavier than any argument we'd ever had. When she returned later, she smelled faintly of cologne that didn't belong to me, her hair slightly out of place. She kissed me on the forehead and told me it had been a productive night, then headed straight to bed without another word. The next morning, while using our shared laptop, I found a single open tab she'd forgotten to close. A map search for the Grandview Hotel. The date on the search was 2 days before her supposed business meeting, and it felt like the breath was knocked out of me. I took a screenshot, emailed it to myself, and closed the tab before she could notice anything missing. That Thursday, she said she had to work late again, and I played along, wishing her a good night as she walked out the door. 10 minutes later, I was in my car, following her from a safe distance, my pulse pounding with each turn she took. She didn't go toward her office. Instead, she drove into the city and parked in the underground garage of a boutique hotel. I stayed parked 2 blocks away, watching the entrance from the shadows, my grip tight on the steering wheel. Within minutes, she appeared with a man I'd never seen before, both laughing in a way that looked far too familiar. He touched her back lightly as they walked, and she leaned closer instead of moving away. They hailed a cab and disappeared into the night, leaving me staring at the spot where they'd been as though I could force them back by will alone. By the time she returned home, her lipstick was faded and her hair slightly tousled, yet she wore the same clothes from earlier. When I asked how work had gone, she launched into a perfect story about a client meeting, as if she had rehearsed every detail. On Saturday, while she was showering, I noticed her purse left open on the counter and saw another hotel envelope tucked inside. This one bore the boutique hotel's logo, with a receipt showing 2 meals, 2 drinks, and an overnight room charge for Thursday. I slid the receipt into my wallet, my hands steady even though my heart felt like it was cracking. The following week, I installed a location tracking app on her phone while she was getting ready for bed. It wasn't something I ever imagined doing, but after everything I'd seen, I needed to know the truth without relying on her words. She had secrets. Now so did I, and I told myself that balance was fair, even if it was ugly. 2 nights later, the tracker showed her at a restaurant she'd never mentioned before, in a part of town we rarely visited. I drove there quietly and parked across the street, watching the front doors as I tried to calm my breathing. After 20 minutes, she emerged with the same man from the boutique hotel, their hands brushing as they walked. They got into his car, and I followed from a distance, the night feeling like it stretched for miles. They pulled up to a smaller, more private hotel on the edge of the city, the kind of place where anonymity is the main selling point. I didn't need to see them check in together to know exactly what was happening inside. Back home, I sat in the dark, replaying the images in my head until they felt burned into my skull. I remember the early days of our marriage, how her smile used to feel like home, and now it felt like a weapon. Every detail I uncovered made it harder to imagine there was an innocent explanation. Over the next week, I collected more screenshots, more receipts, more quiet confirmations that the life I thought we had was slipping away. She lied with ease now, her stories getting bolder, as though she believed I'd never think to question them. And in a way, she was right, at least until now, when I had the truth laid out in front of me like an unspoken confession. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, but I knew the time was coming. The more I waited, the more the tension built between us, invisible but undeniable. I just needed the right moment, the one where there would be no way for her to twist the truth. By the second week of tracking her, I had enough proof to fill a folder, each screenshot and receipt another crack in the foundation of our marriage. Still, I didn't rush into it. Part of me wanted to be absolutely sure there was no possible way she could talk her way out of what I'd seen. The truth was heavy, but the moment I revealed it, everything we were would change forever. That Thursday evening, she claimed she had another late meeting, and my chest tightened like it always did now. Instead of following her, I stayed home, readying the evidence I had collected into one neat, undeniable package. Every screenshot, every photo, every receipt was arranged in the order they happened, each piece telling a story she could no longer deny. When she walked in past midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me, the room lit only by the overhead light. She froze in the doorway when she saw me awake, her smile faltering before it could fully form. "Hey, you're up?" she asked, her voice careful, like she was testing the air before stepping forward. "Sit down," I said quietly, my tone sharper than I intended, but I didn't soften it. She hesitated, then crossed the room and pulled out a chair. sitting across from me with her hands in her lap. The air between us felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. I slid the first photo across to her, the one of her leaving the boutique hotel with the man. Her eyes darted to the image and back to me, her lips parting but no words coming out at first. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin. "It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed at that, though there was no humor left in me. Then explain the receipts, the hotel key cards, the location tracking. Explain all of it, I said, pushing more papers toward her. Her face paled as she realized I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at the table as if the grain in the wood could give her an answer. Finally, she whispered, "It just happened. I didn't plan it. I'm sorry." The words felt small, pitiful, and nowhere near enough to undo what she had done. I leaned back, letting the silence hang between us, heavy and suffocating. Her apology felt like a reflex, not remorse, and the lack of detail only made it worse. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the months of lying straight to my face. "Who is he?" I asked finally, though part of me dreaded the answer. She hesitated, then said his name, a colleague I had met briefly at a company dinner months ago. The memory of their polite handshake came back to me like a cruel joke. I told her I was done, that there was no coming back from this, not for me. She started to cry, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away before her fingers could touch mine. The connection between us was already broken. There was nothing left to hold on to. Over the next few days, we barely spoke except to discuss the logistics of separating our lives. She stayed in the guest room, and I slept with the door locked for reasons I couldn't even fully explain to myself. The home we had built together felt like a museum of lies, every room holding memories I no longer trusted. When she finally moved out, the silence she left behind was both painful and strangely freeing. I found myself sitting alone in the living room one night, looking at the empty spot where her shoes used to be. The absence hurt, but at least it was honest, more honest than anything she had given me in months. Friends and family asked for details, but I kept them short, unwilling to relive every moment of the discovery. It wasn't about protecting her. It was about protecting myself from the spiral of replaying it all over again. The truth was already branded into my memory. It didn't need to be shared to stay real. In the weeks that followed, I started to notice the weight lifting from my chest bit by bit. There were no more late nights wondering where she was, no more pretending to believe the unbelievable. It was painful, but it was also peace, and I didn't realize how much I had been craving that. I still think about her sometimes, about how quickly trust can be broken and how impossible it is to rebuild once it's gone. Maybe she regrets it. Maybe she doesn't. I stopped caring the moment I chose myself over her lies. The truth is, the person I loved doesn't exist anymore, and maybe hasn't for a long time. Now when I look back, I see all the red flags I ignored because I wanted so badly to believe in us. I see how I convinced myself that love meant forgiveness, even when it meant forgiving things that were unforgivable. And I know that ignoring those signs only gave them room to grow until they were too big to miss. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal the same way. If someone lies once, they might do it again, and ignoring red flags only makes them brighter until you can't avoid them.